A fratricidal duel. Two of the best riders in the Tour history, on the same team and disputing the victory. Don't put knives on the table for dinner. Do you want to know what happened during the 1986 Tour de France? Follow my wheel and I'll tell you. Our story today is about one of the fiercest rivalries in Tour de France history. 1986 was the year of the expected duel between the veteran and five-time winner in Paris, the Frenchman Bernard Hinault, and the child prodigy of cycling, the American Greg LeMond. To understand this rivalry, we have to go back to the 1985 Tour, the fifth of the French rider, which the American thought he could win. Both were part of the extravagant Vie Claire team, a team formed based on a lot of money by the French businessman Bernard Tapie, with the veteran Hinault as captain, whose benefits were already lower due to his knee injury. In addition, he had hired the best young man of the moment. It was an innovative, modern, and very cool team, the new image of 21st century cycling. During the 85 Tour, the rivalry between the two riders was brutal. The strong personality of the Breton constantly broke the schemes to the American, who also saw how his own team always favored the interests of his French teammate. The boss even stated that he wasn't too satisfied with LeMond's results. The difference between them was huge. Hinault was fire, courage, too domineering. The American was colder, more calculating, two very different styles. It was during the celebration of his fifth Tour de France when the Frenchman surprised everyone by promising that he would return the following year to help his teammate win his first Tour, to everyone's surprise. Although everyone hesitated at the time, the French champion gave his word to the American. He had his promise. Of course, 1986 was going to be a whole nother story altogether. During the season, the first doubts were generated. Was Hinault really going to miss the opportunity to win his sixth Tour, surpassing Eddy Merckx? Beating the Belgian was a cherry too sweet to refuse. His statements during the year didn't help to improve the situation, always with ambiguous answers. The strongest will win. We'll see what happens in July. Within this atmosphere, the 1986 Tour saw its first high mountain stage with the finish line in Pau, a typical finish in the Pyrenees Mountains. 220 kilometers with 6 scoring mountain passes. The last one, the Mare Blanc, a prelude to the Queen stage. With 100 kilometers to go, Hinault picks up the pace and is in the lead with Delgado and Bernard. LeMond is left behind alone and not knowing what to do. The American didn't have the punch of the French cyclist. Delgado was the winner of the day, and LeMond entered 4 minutes after the French rider, who won the yellow jersey. A nice way to help your teammate. The face of the American said it all. The next day, the Queen stage. 180 kilometers with climbs such as Tourmalet, Aspen, Peyre-Sud, and Super Bagneres. A legendary day. A classic route in the history of the great French race, where great cyclists triumphed like Trueba, Coppi, and Merckx. To everyone's surprise, Hinault attacks during the descent to the Tourmalet. The finish line is 180 kilometers away, and there are 3 mountains to climb. His difference is enough, but he's the Badger, an indomitable beast. But his ambition will be too expensive. Before Super Bagneres, he's overtaken by his pursuers. The French champion is shattered. Following the wheel of his compatriot Armstrong, LeMond marches forward, taking off his teammate, the Tour de France leader. The American wins the stage by hitting the table, but the Frenchman retains the yellow jersey for 40 seconds. That night, tensions in the French team's hotel had to be incredible. The peloton's crossing between the Pyrenees and the Alps wasn't smooth at all. Hinault used all his weapons like an old fox to unbalance the American cyclist, who saw how his worst enemy was in his own house. Thus, the 16th stage was reached, crossing the Alpine mountain range with the finish line in the Granon climb. A very hard stage won by the Spaniard of the Teca team, Eduardo Chozas, where the battle was to be fought behind. The great French champion had problems in his knee during the ascent to the Izoard, where he even had to vary the height of his saddle to be able to continue, whereby other times another cycling. LEMOND, taking advantage of the attack of the Swiss Zimmermann, goes ahead of his teammate in 3 minutes at the finish line, thus getting to wear the yellow with a comfortable advantage for the remainder of the tour. With this new race situation, we could all think that Hinault would dedicate himself to fulfilling his promise and work for his partner. But whoever thought that didn't know the Badger well. The remaining stages were developed in a very different way. The meeting at the hotel was amazing. The situation was fine for the American, but Bernard Hinault shouldn't be third. In the next day's stage, on the way to Alpe d'Huez, they would have to attack Zimmermann, second classified. LEMOND didn't leave his astonishment. The day he finally dresses in yellow, his director orders him to attack. Incredible. The tension within La Vie Claire team was unbearable. The press didn't help either. Logically, everyone supported the local rider. LEMOND became obsessed that he even slept with the bicycle in his own room. And all this on the eve of a terrible day where cyclists would have to ascend Telegraphe, Galibier, and La Croix de Fer to finish in the mythical Alpe d'Huez, perhaps one of the toughest routes in the history of the Tour de France. Crazy. During the descent in Col de Galibier, the Frenchman, showing all his courage, attacked. It was the attack of a fallen idol. The American, who that day had good legs, began the pursuit of his partner. The one who couldn't is Zimmermann, who seems to have given up. Ahead is a group with Hinault, LEMOND, and a third teammate with the Croix de Fer and the Alpe d'Huez on the horizon. It seems clear that the 1986 Tour will be for La Vie Claire, but for whom? In a short time, our protagonists are left alone in the lead. The race becomes an individual duel between the two strongest, the 5-time champion veteran and the young American considered the great successor. Such an incredible situation couldn't be imagined. A struggle of egos during the most iconic ascent of that tour in 1986. Curves that will see Hinault crowned as the god of cycling or give up and hand over his crown to the new idol of modern cycling. An hour later, and without even hint of an epic battle, the two riders enter the finish line holding hands, illustrating the change of era within world cycling. A nice photo, both put on a show, so much so that the Frenchman made sure to enter first. In this way, and with not a few problems, Greg LeMond managed to arrive in Paris dressed in yellow, winning his first Tour de France and the first tour for a cyclist from the American continent, in what was the beginning of a very successful career in French lands. Hinault, the great champion, thus disputed his last Tour de France, placing himself forever in the Olympus of the best cyclists in race history. Thank you very much for getting here. If you liked the video, subscribe and like. And if you want to continue enjoying with the best cyclists in history, don't miss this.